Hello, Termites. We're on night 70 together. And every time I think I won't make it to the end of the book, well, some people aren't behaving very well in this country, and it's pushing us all backwards. And it's funny till it's not. Please wear your mask, even if you don't believe it. How hard is it? Just be nice. Be a nice person. Maybe it'll work. Fuck it, the other stuff hasn't, right? Maybe it'll work. What are we drinking? Well, one of my favorite places to visit in the fall is Gatlinburg, Tennessee. It's the home of Dollywood. As much as I love Dolly Parton, I've never been in Dollywood. I don't want to watch people do old-timey things from the past, like make holes in leather. It's not my thing. But I like Gatlinburg. It's just a little bit. Sevierville, that's where Dolly's from and Dolly Parton is. It's just right down the road. And Sevierville is a dry county, assuming there'd be no alcohol at Dollywood either. That's what would be my guess. Because if you want the good alcohol, you have to drive 3 miles down the street. Technically, now you're in Gatlinburg, and they have a lot of moonshine distilleries. And this one is my favorite, Old Smoky Moonshine. This is all over the country now. You can get it anywhere. This is margarita flavored. Be very careful with this because it tastes so good. You think it's like Kool-Aid or some shit. Well, you can trust me by some dancing videos that were shot of me doing my hillbilly banjo dancing. It's got a little more to it than that. They have a hunch punch that tastes like, so good. A vanilla, I would recommend that. I'm not a big coffee person, but the people that like coffee say the coffee one's really good. They've got a million of them. Check your local liquor store. And if they don't have Old Smoky, just get anything in a jar. Let's get back to Tanya, shall we? We left her off. Her friends rolled her over in a luggage cart to announce at some publishing houses that she had written a song. And then they don't really say what happened there. It says, I'd heard Hank Williams Jr. was in town, so we demoed the song, tracked him down at a local club, and pitched it to him. He said he liked it. He was going to record it as soon as he could. I thought, damn, this is easy. No kidding. The next thing we knew, Hank called up, said he changed some words, and if we wanted to cut the song, we'd have to give him part of the writer's credit. Wah, wah. Everybody knows how that goes. Now I'm a co-writer. I started bitching to it about my dad later this week, saying I wasn't going to let him do it. I understand the bitching, but you have to let him do it. Sorry, it's Hank Williams Jr. You got to go, okay, buddy, 50-50. Because you wouldn't even have that 50 if he didn't sing it, right? Unless you could find somebody more famous, but he said yes. Are you crazy, Daddy said? A Hank Williams Jr. cut is the big time, and he's just doing business. That's why people like him have money. Now I agree with Daddy. Goes back and forth a lot. I could see why she'd be confused, too. Some days I agree with Daddy, and some days I think he's out of his goddamn mind. Hank got writer's credit, and he cut the song with guest vocals by Waylon and Ernest Tubb. I couldn't believe that I'd not only written a song for Hank, Waylon, and Ernest had recorded it. I followed that song up the charts as intensely as I followed Bartender Blues, that song I pitched to George Jones back in 1977. This time I had a financial interest, and it made it up to number 6 on Billboard, but because we had so many writers, none of us got rich. Well, got to do what Dolly did, the Save Your Good song for Whitney Houston. She's no longer with us, sadly, but that's the moral. But Hank was pretty big. So what are you going to do? I continued to get caught up in Nashville distractions. One night, David Mallow and I were in the studio, and I got a call. When I answered, a man said, "Hey, Tanya, I'm in town and wanted to get together and play some songs." This guy said, "I can't sing, but I can hum." Man, I thought, who is this weirdo and how'd he get this number? Then he started laughing. "This is Jim Gardner, and I'm out at Ed Bruce's house listening to some fairly good songwriters. Why don't you come on out?" I love Jim Gardner, and he likes me, even if Glenn did think I wasn't ladylike enough around him. Jim was in town to help Ed and Patsy Bruce make their escape from Hollyweird. Oh, really? We're going to throw that one out? Hollyweird. There's nothing that weird out there. I've spent a lot of time there. It's really not. I wish it was weirder. It builds it up itself. There actually is no actual Hollywood either. As a Midwest person, you think you're going to go to a place and there's going to be all this stuff. I don't know what I thought it'd be, but it's just spread out. People just audition in buildings and offices. It's really not that glamorous. The Beach is better. Hollyweird, where they lived with while Ed co-starred in remakes of Maverick. When the show finally wrapped and the Bruces could return to their home in Fernville, Tennessee, they were two happy country music folks. That night, they even tied a big yellow ribbon around an old oak tree. Get it? In their front yard, and a sign that read, "The Fernville Frolic Off." I rapped my last vocal and called Dean Dillon, who ran right over with a six-pack and a guitar. We got to the Bruce's house. I had to laugh because those fairly good songwriters were the best in the business. Sony Throckmorton, Red Lane, Dave Kirby, Whitey Schaefer, and the dean of them all, Harlan Howard. I met these writers in passing during the first years of my career, but this is the first time I'd had a chance to really spend time listening to them talk about their craft. Jim had always been a country music fan, and he got involved with writers over the years through playing golf at Willie Nelson and Darrell Royal's annual tournaments in Houston. Every time someone played a song, I'd say, I wanna hold on that. Don't you play it for anybody else. One of the best things about that night was the writers took me seriously, too. They didn't treat me like a chick singer who didn't know her place if I'd have had the nerve to say something about a song's lyrics or melody. This was the part of the music business I want to be part of. The creativity flowing through the house energized me almost as much as being on stage. Ed Bruce told a great story about that night receiving a phone call from Billy Sherrill late one night in 1973. "I'm cutting Tanya Tucker tomorrow, and I need one more song for the session," Billy said. "Have you got anything?" "Sure," Ed told him. "I'll be at the studio before you are." But in fact, he didn't have a song that he thought was just right. So he sat down with his guitar, wrote all night, and by the morning he was at the studio with a guitar vocal demo of "That Man That Turned My Mama On." I'm not sure I ever got to hear that. I'm going to have to Google that. Which turned out to be the sixth hit of my career. Huh. I've even seen Tanya Tucker twice, and I don't remember her playing that. Maybe I heard it and I didn't know what it was. Dean was putting the big rush on me that night at Bruce's party, but I was so excited about the songs being sung, I didn't pay much attention to it. That night, at least, music had priority. When the gathering started breaking up, Dean and I were getting ready to leave. Harlan Howard paid me a tremendous compliment, and he said, "Tanya, I think you're a writer trapped in a singer's body." Funny thing happened that night, and I thought it was proof positive that Hollyweird can affect anybody. A lot of songwriters are notoriously unbusinesslike, but anybody who knows Patsy Bruce knows that while she and Ed were married, she was the business head of the household, and she did a hell of a job, too. She's also a very straight arrow kind of lady. That night, Jim Gardner needed to talk in private about a business deal he and Ed had going, so Jim and Patsy went to the master bedroom. Well, Patsy only had one chair in there and a huge bed, so the two of them just stretched across it and started talking. All of a sudden, Jim says, "Patsy, you're not going to believe this, but look out your sliding doors." People in Fernwood had found out James Gardner was coming to stay at the Bruce's house, and there, peering through the doors, were two little old ladies with their mouths dropped wide open. Jim and Patsy came out of the room laughing, and Patsy said, "Hollyweird followed us back here, and it's ruined my reputation in one day. Ha ha ha." I thought it was great to go where a party where somebody else might get into trouble. One afternoon, Eddie Raven and his guitar player, Frank Meyer, showed up to the studio and said they had the first verse and a chorus for my song idea. We arranged to meet at the Spence and finish Changes. I think the thing that makes a song work is when you say something you really mean, something that is your truth and somebody else's truth too. The specific and general. Remember that, Termites, write that down. If you're going to write a song, you need to have the specific and the general, your truth and somebody else's truth. I wrote a line about a man rejecting the part of a woman's personality that makes her so proud. How many men have been attracted to a headstrong woman, admired her for it, and then despise that part of her in the long run? Exactly. Unfortunately, too many times women change themselves instead of changing to another man. That's right. You don't switch you switch him. See how that switcheroo works? You stay put, go get a different him. Plenty out there. I wish I'd continue to write songs like I did during those months with both Eddie and Frank and Dean and Gary. I did work on songs from time to time in the next few years, but more than often I just went to clubs to hear established writers perform their material. My recording of Changes was Frank Meyer's first cut, and he got his second cut because of coming to the studio that day. While he was talking to me, he handed David Malloy a tape for some sessions he was getting ready to do with Eddie Rabbitt and Crystal Gale. Remember Crystal Gare? Remember her hair? I always described it as a haunted house. I just can't. I can't even imagine how you wash that, how you deal with that, how you don't. I'd fall. I'd trip on my own hair. That would happen a lot. She did sing that song, though. Remember Crystal Gale? Nobody knows she's Loretta Lynn's little sister. Well, I mean, some people, but a lot of people don't know that. A little bit different than Loretta. A little more refined, if you will. Don't it make my brown eyes, don't it make my brown eyes blue? I didn't love that song, but it was a big hit for her. So good for Crystal. The song turned out to be You and I, a #1 country hit and top 10 pop hit. He's now one half of the duo Baker and Myers, and with Gary Baker wrote I Swear, a song recorded by both John Michael Montgomery and All for One, and took home almost every award the business had to offer. But he got his start with me, so I figured he ought to be writing another one of those blockbusters and sending it my way. Absolutely. We'll read one more paragraph, Termites. I know it's sad when it gets to the end of one of these, isn't it? But look, we're only on page 185. For all the nerds, I forgot to tell you, I feel bad. Despite the interruptions, we finally got Changes finished. It produced one top 10 hit, Feels Right. Changes, a song I'd written about Glenn Campbell, only went to number 41 in Billboard, but I think it's a good album. Certainly not as technically advanced as the CDs we make today, but it holds up. Somehow all those styles, the rock edge sound, the country, the torch, I've got to Google what this torch thing is, work together. Unfortunately, the album didn't do well commercially. And Arista, right. That's my dyslexia kicking in. Arista wasn't set up to market and promote country product, and the only competition for chart space was stiffer than ever. Barbara Mandrell, Dolly Parton, Crystal Gale, the Gatlins, the Oaks, Willie Nelson, Waylon Jennings, all those people were superstars, and they were recording on powerful country labels where people knew exactly what wheels had to turn to keep them and act on top. It would be several years before Clive hired Tom Dubois, and Arista's country division got its machinery oiled. So when she says it's going to be a few years, I'm going to imagine we're going to hear about some trouble. I'm going to imagine idle time is not good for Tanya Tucker. Idle hands are the devil's workshop. I think we all know that. Idle minds are the devil's workshop. All right, Termites. Excuse me, that's just a tiny cough. It's not coronavirus. At least I don't think so. It'd be hard to have it because I don't go anywhere. All right, well, unless that other termite brought it in here. That'll be a shit show if that happened. Get yourself comfortable. Pull up your summer sheet. Maybe even a summer, some sort of little light summer comforter. In case you turn the AC down too low and start to freeze your ass off. You might want to have that handy. Or a summer quilt. Do you have one? I don't. I asked my mom to get me one, and she went to the Amish place in Missouri, and she went on the farm and said she almost died. She claimed she almost died because the Amish people, had a German Shepherd. That German Shepherd didn't do anything, but according to my mother, it was a near-death experience, even though the German Shepherd was in not a cage, but it couldn't have gotten to her. But in her mind, it could. So that's why she almost died. But she got me a winter quilt, which is great for the winter. But I was shooting for a little something summery. Okay, termites, pull that sheet up. Keep that comforter nearby in case you start freezing. Pull it up. Tell yourself you're a good termite. You're a worthy termite. All right. Night-night, termites.